Welcome. I'm Doug Morgan, and you're listening to Uncommon Sense, where we hunt for the truth in the topics you're not supposed to talk about, Christianity and politics. If I found out that your favorite sports team was playing in a game where the opponents were working with the referees to win the game, would that be okay? Would you be okay with that? Well, Drew Berkmeyer, who just dropped a big investigative report for the Daily Wire, and he says the Biden Justice Department helped secure private funding for a major pro-abortion group that helped the Biden administration track and imprison peaceful pro-life protesters is what a shocking new report reveals. The Trump Department of Justice on Tuesday revealed an 800-page expose on how the Biden administration weaponized the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances, or FACE Act, to target pro-life Americans, originally designed to protect access to abortion clinics and crisis pregnancy centers. The Biden administration used the law largely to target peaceful pro-life protesters. One of the most striking findings in yesterday's report is that a senior Biden DOJ official identified as a key prosecutor on FACE Act cases agreed to serve as a reference for the National Abortion Federation in a private grant application. Now, according to the DOJ press release, investigators, quote, found no record of ethics approval for the attorney to take an interest in the financial outcome of a party having business before the Biden DOJ, unquote. Now, emails show direct communication between DOJ attorney Sanjay Patel and National Abortion Federation officials regarding the request. In a December 2020 email, Patel told National Abortion Federation Senior Security Director Tara Gannon to feel, this is a quote, feel free to use me as a reference, unquote. Even as internal DOJ discussions acknowledge potential ethical concerns. At one point, a supervisor suggested Patel consult with an ethics officer before proceeding. However, the report states that DOJ records contain no evidence that such approval was ever sought or granted. The Justice Department did not immediately respond to a request, obviously, and on Monday, Patel, among at least 3 other prosecutors, were fired for weaponizing the FACE Act. This is according to CBS News. Now, the issue resurfaced in 2023 when National Abortion Federation again approached Biden officials for help with a funding proposal. This time, the group requested a written, quote, impact statement, unquote, on Justice Department letterhead, to support its application, explicitly asking the official to describe their working relationship and the value of National Abortion Federation security operations. While the DOJ attorney acknowledged he would need permission before complying, internal records show no indication the request was formally approved or denied. Beyond the grant issue, the report paints a broader picture of what it describes as a two-way relationship between the Biden Justice Department and pro-abortion organizations. According to investigators, communication between Biden officials and outside groups was frequent and often initiated by the department itself. Advocacy organizations provided tips and intelligence and referrals related to potential FACE Act violations, sometimes at DOJ's request, while prosecutors, in turn, shared information and maintained ongoing cooperation. Quote, the Biden DOJ remained in continual contact with pro-abortion groups regarding the FACE Act. This is what the report states. Information flowed 2 ways. The relationship effectively extended to operational support as well, and the abortion groups raised concerns or sought assistance, and Biden officials reportedly helped connect them with the federal law enforcement resources, including the FBI. In some cases, the task force director personally facilitated instructions and follow-up. The level of coordination raises serious questions about impartiality, particularly given the DOJ's aggressive use of the FACE Act during the same period, often targeting pro-life activists. The communications revealed in Tuesday's report also appeared to conflict with testimony from a senior National Abortion Federation official during a congressional hearing and an exchange with Representative Chip Roy, the Republican from Texas. National Abortion Federation Chief Legal and Strategy Officer Talcott Camp was asked whether she had communicated with the Biden Justice Department regarding the FACE Act enforcement. Here's what she initially said, quote, "I have not." And she initially said that before qualifying that may have had contact, but I did not believe it involved enforcement discussions. However, emails suggest that the NAF had a far more extensive relationship, including cooperation in cases and ongoing communication with the Biden DOJ personnel tied directly to the FACE Act enforcement efforts. So, the report further alleges that while pro-abortion groups enjoyed regular access and responsiveness from the Biden officials, pro-life organizations were not afforded the same level of engagement. Investigators found that the DOJ prosecutors shared certain information with abortion advocacy groups that was not similarly disclosed to pro-life entities, raising concerns about unequal treatment under law. This is what I'm talking about. If, your sports team was being, basically having to go against another opponent and the referees. So, additionally, the department's commitment to pursuing FACE Act cases was, according to the report, at times aligned with the priorities and interests of those same outside groups. Quote, "The Biden DOJ committed to pursuing FACE Act cases to support these groups' interests. The National Abortion Federation has yet to respond to the findings in the report." And so, that's, again, not a shocker, right? But I really thought that Ben Shapiro put it best when he said in his opinion piece, he said, "We now know that the Biden administration was literally partnering with abortion activists to track and imprison pro-lifers. They literally went after them. When I see President Trump and Pope Leo going at it, I think to myself, if we're going to talk about presidents who are legitimately attacking Catholics, we should really be talking about Barack Obama, who went after the Little Sisters of the Poor and decided that he was going to mainstream every sin that he could find. We should talk about Joe Biden, who apparently was using the DOJ to go after pro-lifers, which, of course, is insane. According to the Daily Wire reporting, President Biden's administration relied on information gathering from radical pro-abortion groups to track, prosecute, and snoop on peaceful pro-life protesters who were later arrested by the FBI. A DOJ report entitled "The Biden Administration's Weaponization of the FACE Act" examined more than 700,000 records. The FACE Act is a bill that was designed to prevent people from obstructing entry to abortion clinics. And the FACE Act also said you weren't allowed to invade churches during services. Now, that, of course, came up in the context of Don Lemon and his friends invading and disturbing a church service in order to protect ICE. Of course, they didn't get in trouble, but the dossiers that the DOJ examined contained information about pro-life activists who had not yet been charged with any federal crimes, but were deemed threats by abortion groups because of their activism. We've seen this kind of pattern emerge in all of the reporting from the Biden administration over and over and over. They were they were using left-wing cutout groups to do their dirty work, whether it was the Biden administration, State Department contracting out to other services to promote boycotts of right-wing news outlets, or whether it was the Biden administration outsourcing its investigative pursuits to anti-life, pro-choice organizations to target pro-lifers. The Biden administration liked to do such things. And according to the Daily Wire reporting, the weaponization can be traced to former Attorney General Merrick Garland. Yeah, real piece of work. And his resurrection of the National Task Force on Violence Against Reproductive Health Care Providers, the month after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade in June of 2022. That task force was operating out of the department's Civil Rights Division under the direction of Sanjay Patel, who was reportedly fired, of course, on Monday. Patel was on the texting terms with the National Abortion Federation security team and was regularly communicating with the Planned Parenthood Foundation of America and the Feminist Majority Foundation, according to the DOJ. Now, members of the Biden DOJ were continually coordinating openly with various abortion groups and leaders in the abortion movement. This was all part of these non-governmental agencies working hand in glove with the federal government under Joe Biden. Daily Wire reportedly looked into the sentences that were sought by the Biden DOJ against pro-life activists, and what they found is that the Biden DOJ asked for a longer average sentence for pro-life defendants compared to pro-abortion defendants. Listen to this. Actual sentences shook out to average 14 months for pro-life defendants versus 3 months for pro-choice defendants. This is astonishing. It demonstrates the full-scale animus that the Biden administration had for pro-life movement. This is nothing new. If you go back to the Clinton administration, the attempt to target political adversaries using the DOJ is just perfectly obvious. He said, I've said it over and over that the left likes to say that Donald Trump broke all the rules, that he's the one who killed the American political system. Well, the reality is that the American political system was already dead. Trump just stumbled upon it. Barack Obama used the IRS, if you remember right, to go after pro-life groups, conservative groups, and the Tea Party groups. Joe Biden's DOJ targeted pro-lifers, obviously. And there's nothing new here. Democrats have been doing this for a very, very long time. Imagine the scandal if, for example, the Trump administration were coordinating with pro-life groups to go after pro-abortion advocates or anti-abortion advocates. So in other words, if Trump were going after advocates that were from Planned Parenthood, can you imagine the scandal? Can you imagine the front page coverage? One of the questions here is how people who were involved in this were allowed to stay at the DOJ for so long. I mean, Sanjay Patel was still working for the DOJ all the way until Monday of this week, which is crazy and demonstrates the truth of President Trump's statement that there is, in fact, a deep state. There are lifelong appointees of various administrations who are still working inside the current administration, working against the president's priorities. That's very real. It just goes to show you that the attempt to cleanse the administration of holdovers is an ongoing pursuit. The Democratic Party is perfectly willing to use the auspices of government to go after religious people. They've been doing it over and over and over again. It's one of the reasons, he says, that I say that my family, that we ought to leave California. And they did. He did. He says, my great fear is that the states like California will effectively quasi-criminalize religious practice by essentially saying that any 501c3 that receives tax-exempt status from the state government must buy into the left-wing social agenda. If the Democrats were able to take over the Supreme Court, they would get away with that. They would be able to use anti-discrimination law as a guise for cracking down on First Amendment religiously protected activity. That is the direction that Democrats would love to move. And if left to their own devices, they absolutely would be able to do it. If Democrats had won in 2024, Kamala Harris would have attempted to stack the Supreme Court and state governments everywhere. And the state governments would be pursuing anti-religious activity just like this. The Biden administration was, in my opinion, he says, the worst administration in modern American history. Worst ever. Even worse than Obama. Because Obama didn't say the quiet part out loud. Biden said the quiet part out loud. And I will say that when it comes to fighting the left, when they come after you in court or they trample on your rights, and the rights of ordinary people, what can ordinary people like you and I do about it? Well, Gene Hamilton gives us some real hope. When an ordinary American, he says, takes on a woke corporate giant or powerful institution in court, the question isn't always just who's right, it's who can afford the fight. In today's legal system, staying power comes from financial resources, not just conviction or correctness. And that imbalance has muzzled countless Americans seeking to challenge the assault on their freedoms. Conservatives should oppose lawfare and seek major changes to bring back justice to our justice system. But we should not confuse it with the very tool that helps citizens fight back. In a report that he recently published, he says, I explain how third-party litigation finance, that's TPLF, third-party litigation finance, is one of the few remaining mechanisms that allows ordinary citizens to take powerful woke corporations, institutions, and government bureaucrats to court on a level playing field. The prevalence of lawfare is exactly what makes this tool indispensable. Over the past decade, the left has turned the legal system into a political weapon. Their activists flood courts with suits designed to punish conservative speech, religious liberty, and parental rights. Meanwhile, conservative causes, whether challenging DEI mandates or ESG policies or big tech censorship, often falter because plaintiffs can't afford the long, expensive battle that follows. Rights on paper mean little without the resources to enforce them. And conservative nonprofits fight valiantly, of course, but they can't do everything. Litigation finance can help fill that gap. It provides non-resource capital from investors who have conducted rigorous due diligence and concluded that a claim has real merit. The plaintiff, a conservative activist, a small business owner, or an everyday American whose rights have been trampled, risks nothing beyond the claim itself. The funder assumes the financial risk in exchange for, of course, a negotiated share of any recovery. This structure is revolutionary for, meritorious cases that would otherwise die on the vine because the plaintiff cannot outlast deep-pocketed opponents who treat litigation as a war of attrition. Like contingency fees, litigation finance doesn't manufacture lawsuits. It makes viable ones possible that would otherwise never see the light of day. For conservatives, this is critical. It can fund lawsuits against woke corporations enforcing DEI mandates, challenges to big tech viewpoint discrimination, election integrity litigation, and defenses or counterclaims against the left's lawfare machine. Market discipline keeps this system honest. Serious funders, back strong cases and avoid frivolous ones because repeated losses would be financial suicide. So lawfare is about weaponizing process to punish opponents regardless of the merit. Litigation finance, by contrast, depends on the system working fairly. One abuses the law, the other enforces it. At the very moment, conservatives should be embracing this equalizer. Some in Washington are trying to strangle it. The Litigation Funding Transparency Act of 2026 and Protecting TPLF from Abuse Act would force parties to broadly disclose their funding arrangements, a move that would hand corporate defendants a strategic advantage before the first motion is filed. Senator Thom Tillis, thank you. He's that Republican from North Carolina. He, meanwhile, is pushing a punitive tax proposal designed to make litigation finance economically unviable. Even state legislators in Tennessee and Missouri, among others, have introduced similar proposals to sharply restrict litigation finance. These measures would not deter lawfare. They would bolster the very corporations pushing progressive social agendas by choking off the capital that allows conservatives to challenge them. Instead of empowering Americans to fight back, these bills would ensure that only the wealthy and well-connected can afford to litigate. Conservatives should, of course, guard against genuine national security risks. No one wants foreign adversaries such as China or Russia using our courts to advance their interests. But the risk is narrow and manageable. A straightforward prohibition on funding from foreign adversaries with strict enforcement would block bad actors without undermining the entire system. And the answer to potential foreign infiltration of litigation finance isn't to cripple American access to justice. It's to keep the market clean so American plaintiffs can continue holding powerful corporations and institutions accountable. If these punitive measures advance in their current forms, conservative lawmakers will have helped dismantle one of the few tools that can actually help their voters. The small business owner fighting, discriminatory corporate practices, the church defending its religious liberty, the parent challenging school censorship will all be left effectively defenseless unless they are independently wealthy or have the backing of a strong conservative legal organization. And woke corporations enjoy even more insulation from accountability. Conservative lawmakers and leaders should be leading the charge in the positive direction. Litigation finance is a pro-family, pro-small business, pro-rule of law innovation that restores fairness to the courtroom. They should defend it against overbroad disclosure mandates and punitive taxes while enacting a narrow foreign adversary ban to keep the system clean. And I think this is a good way to go. I think that this is a good tool that can be used in our defense. But we were talking earlier about abortion and Planned Parenthood and how the government has weaponized the pro-abortion industry. And it was interesting because Planned Parenthood, they came out with their annual report the other day, and it shows the direction that they are headed. And I thought it was really pertinent to our discussion today. Penny Nance, who she had an opinion piece, and she wrote this. She said, "If you weren't looking for it, you would have missed it." Planned Parenthood quietly released its 2024-2025 annual report on April 3rd. Good Friday, of course. Not a day before breaking news stories, unless, that is, you want the story to be buried. Why isn't Planned Parenthood shouting their abortions? Perhaps because the numbers undercut their official narrative. Planned Parenthood terminated 434,450 pregnancies in 2024. That's an average of 1,190 unborn babies killed every day. In an all-time high for the organization. And this is up 8% from the previous year. Planned Parenthood also reported receiving a jaw-dropping $832 million in federal tax dollars via Medicaid. $832 million. These are Medicaid reimbursements and grants in the fiscal year 2024, all while general services, like, other than abortion, have plummeted. The report notes that roughly 40 clinics have closed nationwide in the past year. Yay, right? Yet those closures appear to represent a change in strategy for the organization and a new opportunity to engage desperate and frightened young women to terminate their pregnancies. Planned Parenthood states that as, quote, restrictions force parents to take on increased costs and barriers, it is determined to find new paths to get care to people who need it, unquote. That's highlighting its virtual health centers and Planned Parenthood direct telehealth platform. So by pouring resources into telehealth, Planned Parenthood gains unfettered access to peddle the abortion drug without any physician oversight, without any screening or any in-person care for women. In 2024-2025, Planned Parenthood provided abortion pills through telemedicine in 24 states, over 320,390 telehealth appointments, leaving little doubt that telehealth is the corporation's next frontier and cash cow. The abortion drug is presently responsible for more than 2/3 of abortions in the U.S. In other words, Planned Parenthood wants to be able to provide women with abortion access anywhere, anytime, with little more than a Zoom-style Q&A and a chat with Planned Parenthood's AI chatbot, Rue. Just as the abortion drug is Planned Parenthood's newest frontier, so is the mail-order abortion crisis Concerned Women for America's, that's CWA, highest priority. Mail-order abortion via telehealth appointments is the antithesis of care, with little to no physician oversight, no ultrasound, and no screening for the ectopic pregnancies, which can be, of course, fatal combined with the abortion drug. Mail order abortion leaves women alone and self-managing and pain, going through these painful abortions in their own bathrooms. Planned Parenthood claims that the abortion drug is safer than Tylenol. Well, of course, that's just a bald-faced lie. The Food and Drug Administration's own black box label for drug warns that it may send 1 in 25 women to the emergency room with hemorrhaging and sepsis, incomplete abortions or other life-threatening complications. Beyond that, 50 tons of unborn babies remains in the chemical residues from the chemical abortions. They're flushed into American waterways every year. We are all forced to drink the unfiltered chemical residue from drug-induced abortions. CWA has endorsed a number of proposals to end the mail-order abortion crisis inaugurated by Planned Parenthood. Senator Josh Hawley recently introduced a bill to command the abortion drug mifepristone approved application to be withdrawn from the purposes of terminating a pregnancy from the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Act, a necessary step to confront the dangerous drug. And in the House of Representatives, Representative Mary Miller from Illinois introduced the Clean Water for All Life Act, which will require the abortion drug to be dispensed with a medical waste catch kit to ensure that this drug no longer pollutes our water. Ultimately, the U.S. Fertility rates hitting a new low in 2025, women and families need to be supported when it comes to having children. Our communities and churches must wrap their arms around women facing unplanned pregnancies, and the government would be better suited to support life-affirming pregnancy resource centers and federally qualified health centers that outnumber Planned Parenthood around 43-1. Concerned Women for American Legislative Act Committee strongly supports Representative Dana Harbinger's Pregnancy Government Act, Pregnancy.gov Act, which, if passed, would do just that by establishing an easy-to-use online database for women in need of local prenatal and postnatal services and counseling and adoption resources and nutrition coaching, abuse relief and recovery, addiction services, mental health services, and an array of life-affirming care. With abortions and federal funding at an all-time reported high in 2024-2025, it is clear that Planned Parenthood, brick and mortar, or telehealth doesn't deserve a single penny from the American taxpayers. And I would totally agree with that. I would love to hear what you think on it, though. Of course, you can always do that at uncommonsensepodcast.com. Thank you very much for listening.
This podcast is a production of Morganite Communications.